Call meeting to order. Start with roll call.
Chair Worth,
Here.
Vice Chair Gant, here. King Bevel.
Here.
Dorian Lively is absent tonight. Lisa Patterson, here. Diane Foster, here. And Mike Smith. Great, thank you.
Okay, so approval of the minutes. Does anybody have any comments, corrections? Minutes? If none, take motion to approve.
I'll move. Let me approve.
All right. Discussion? All right, take a vote, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. On to business, so got a handful of things here for you, Captain Carlson, start with the introduction. Control captain.
Well, you can see there's two of us here today. We just hired, this is Daniel Captain. He's going to take over my duties on the patrol side and hopefully take over this in the next coming months. I enjoyed this. You want to say something?
Just very excited to be here. This is day 4 for me, with Sherwood. And so, drinking from the fire hose, very excited to be part of this committee. And I've spoken to this committee chair before I actually got started here, so I can know a little bit about what you're doing, but I don't know the history. So I'll be excited to watch and learn. And I've had 29 years in law enforcement. Very excited to be transitioning over to Sherwood. Like I said, lots to learn about the culture of Sherwood and just about this committee and how. So glad I can be there for any possible way. Well, I have a bit of an accent, so I'll just kind of clear that air. So I was a constable in Canada for 4 years. I was an officer in Coos Bay for 4 years, and then the last 20, just shy of 21 years, we're in Hillsborough as a lieutenant. So. Yeah. I'm not ready to be done, so. Yeah.
Thanks for welcome. I mean, I guess I kind of still consider us fairly new. We're still learning and adapting as we go. So,
We'll learn together.
yeah. All right, so we can move on to council approved committee members. Big funders.
Yep, so last city council meeting, they reappointed Lisa Patterson and Tiffany. Congratulations, Tiffany, get another 3 years. I can just keep going.
Sure.
National Night Out, that's next Tuesday from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Right over here at Canyon Square Plaza. We are all going to be there. So we wanted to invite you guys there. If you want to, we can set up a little booth in the table so you can do your spiel and educate the citizens that show up on what you guys do and where to go and how to go about filling out these complaints. So, would anybody off the top of your head be interested in showing up? I know it's short, but if you don't, you can email Angie this week or next, but it is next Tuesday. So if someone does want to show up and hang out with us, we're more than welcome. You get free hot dogs. Yeah. There you go.
Could we have just like information people if we don't have somebody that's actually there for like the full time? Like I might be able to come, but probably wouldn't be able to be there the whole time, but if we have just like I don't know if we have any like information.
Tracks of safety, kinds of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. Maybe a link to where they can find the unicorn.
Everyone just let me know if anybody wants
Thanks.
Like, you don't have to show up for the whole 3 hours, just show up for an hour, so it's, you know. But you can,
I guess what's the, I've never been, what's the general feel of it? Is it like you said, it's a community fair kind of thing? You said,
yeah, we're gonna have tents up, there's gonna be live music there, we're grilling hot dogs, soda, water. And there's just gonna be a bunch of officers there that show up and just basically mingle with the citizens, answer any questions. We're gonna have our ATV there, we'll have a tow car there. Some of our gear will probably be down there. Just to get to know us. There are a couple of years, frequently, FBI would show up and they have a table there and do everything. And, another community show.
Fire department.
Fire there. We learn another board that showed up too.
Foundation.
Foundation, sure,
They're
foundation.
opposed sponsors, so they'll be there for sure.
It's a pretty cool event.
The water feature should be on. Yeah. Yeah, it's fun for kids.
all right. We'll move on to the ODOT season investigation report.
Okay, about a year and a half ago, Clackamas County, basically approached and said, we want to support reducing the speed on Murdoch, Baker Creek Road. from 11 to 2's road down, reduce the speed of incoming and outgoing cars along Murdoch. Even though it's a small segment, we greatly appreciate it. So we signed on to it, and about a year and a half later, this person was told, here's the final decision by ODOT. Do you agree? And I said, sure. And so that speed limit, Murdoch, up to the city limits is 35 miles an hour. So I think that's pretty much. 45 at the 7. So that's good news. Bits and pieces.
Where is it? Is it 35 from the roundabout to where?
Not the roundabout. It's from Levon Street.
At Renaissance, the entrance to the Renaissance neighborhood.
And it went from Levon clear up to 2's on Baker Creek Road. So it was quite a distance out into Clackamas County along Baker Creek Road. And Murdoch and Baker Creek are essentially the same road.
No, 35, is that?
35.
We do stand.
Yeah.
We want to get the issues in place and starting with 2022-007. And we have person citizen comment. So I think start with that.
Yeah, I think so. Just, for clarification on what the HOA would like to have done. See if, compared to what's already been done, what's possible.
All right. I think it's your turn.
Great, well, thanks for having me. So, yeah, my wife and I moved to Sherwood in 2018. And specifically selected Sherwood because of how family friendly it is. It's just a great, welcoming, everybody's so kind here. And we were, lucky enough to find our home before the rates are what they are now. But and we picked the Cedar Grove area because of when we went to go visit it, how many children were just running up and down the streets, and that's rain or shine. And so just about every home in our HOA association has a minor or two. And then the location, for those who aren't familiar with the Cedar Brook community, is kind of surrounded by apartment complexes right off of the 99 highway. And so you're turning off of the 99, and then during the summer, like if you went out there right now, there'd be probably 15 kids. They circle around Berkshire and Devonshire. And so they kind of stay secluded in there, and those who live there know to drive. I mean, this isn't even a 15-mile-an-hour place. This is, you creep along, people with their bikes and coming around. So we're all very cautious, but during the school year, and especially when the kids are traveling when, it's so dark in the mornings and in the evenings, that there's a roundabout which students cross from the apartment complexes and our Cedar Brook Association to the elementary schools there, and then all of the housing tracks behind it cross that roundabout to get to the junior high. So it's kind of like, there's a lot happening there in the mornings. And we're lucky enough to have a neighbor at the end that kind of acts as like a little crossing guard, because he's caught some near misses of kids almost getting hit there. And I do understand that, some trees were removed in the parking spaces. We're backed up a little bit to give them more clearance, and we're really appreciative of that. But people just take that roundabout really quickly, and when they're driving or taking a right, they're looking at oncoming traffic, and they'll just kind of blow right through there. And so I think that the kiddos are more on guard when they get into 99 if they're crossing that, but the roundabout is something that they just kind of go out into. And so I think that there's kind of a difference between that. I think that the traffic will only increase as the bridge is built across and parents feel comfortable crossing this 99. So just after observing, kiddos on the city hit in that roundabout, it's just not something that we, of course, nobody wants. And we just are hoping that either some flashing lights or something can be done to conduct like traffic patterns or anything on that roundabout coming right out that 99, and kind of slow people down and have them more alert for that's a crosswalk that's used frequently by young ones.
So this is you're our first public comment in person. So thank you.
Yeah.
But we haven't done that yet with this group. I think that the typical procedure is that hear your comment, and you would move on into discussion of the agenda item. But I think the idea is that there's not extensive back and forth conversation with the public commenter throughout the discussion of our business item. But I think that there could be an opportunity for a clarifying question before we move on to the business. Have you done, can you do that, council? Or is it pretty much just they provide the comment and that's it?
Kind of a gray area. I mean, if you really have a clarifying question, you can ask, but we shouldn't be getting into back and forth and asking a bunch of questions.
Okay.
If it's a glaring question, I think that's okay.
That's good, because we did the day champion in 2006.
So no one has any questions?
I
I-
have a clarifying question, actually. So for the, Jason has it pulled up, so I'm looking at the map, and it looks like, there's 3 crossings north, east, and south. And so I guess I'm just confirming the crossing that you're seeing most conflict with is the north crossing, the one that connects the path to the elementary school.
Correct.
Okay, yeah.
Just a clarifying question. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you you say, like, one of the things you would like to see would be flashing lights or something like that. So just since you're here, can you just clarify, so I know at least in my head, like, what does that mean to you, like specifically? I'm guessing you probably have a clear image in your head, what you think, and so just curious with that.
Yeah, so I just, there is a, there's a roundabout sign, just, something that would, illuminate it or highlight it, mention something to break, people from their normal, like, autopilot mentality when they're driving, I think would, help alert them, and then to, frankly, all of the street lights on that road, they go out, and I don't know if anybody else has noticed that in your community. But we can always rely on them to provide, like, to illuminate that crosswalk, so, just something that, kind of, yeah, signals it as a crosswalk.
Thank you.
Okay, I have one clarifying question. Is it you mentioned that it seemed to be primarily during school commuting hours, is that a fair statement?
Yes, that's really, I think, our concern is getting the kids to and from school safely.
And the school doesn't currently have a crossing guard at that point? Okay. Any other questions? Thank you for coming by.
Yes.
It's helpful to hear from you rather than just have to read it. Appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
How do I slow people down? No, that's not the question. I think the question is, how do we get people to recognize that it is a residential area? And that there's children present, there's crossings there, and that they are aware, and they take the positive step of slowing down and obeying the speed limits. It's not a question of whether it's been done or not. I think it's a question of what is the effectiveness of what we have been trying to do so far. I think that an engineered response is very expensive. I think that how do we, because if you're going to go back to an engineered solution for everything, you're going to bankrupt the city quickly. I think that, again, the three steps are, how do we do public outreach? Is it effective? From there, we go to enforcement. Is that effective? And then we go back into engineering and say, is there an efficiency that we need to overcome? If there's not an efficiency from the engineering standard, then I have to come up with something that is completely unique to try and force somebody to basically speak. So it's individual behavior. It's individual behavior, generally speaking.
The issue was mostly focused during school hours. Maybe I missed that last time. I kind of talked about this one a number of times. I feel like we kind of landed on solutions that we had come up with previously, which some parking software doing some enforcement with them parking. But then it's kind of designed appropriately. Driver behavior was maybe not the best, and it's isolated to a specific small neighborhood that can maybe do their own education. But the school hours thing, I guess, stood out to me, and I wonder if we, like we've done on some other issues, if we can reach out to the school and see if they're aware of the issue, and maybe they might consider putting a crossing guard there.
it's just quite a distance from the
Yeah.
school.
And
Maybe
this-
like, yeah, I mean, it's not like it's like at the end of a school street, like you'd be having
It's
somebody
the other side.
hiking out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's on the same side, but it's,
Oh, it's on the same side.
It's outside what we classify as school zone, where the school
I see.
implement certain things like school zone signage, reduction of speed to, 20 miles an hour, things like that. This is outside that zone of the school would possibly want to get involved, spend funds on.
that's when we go back to the HOA and ask them if they would, like, it sounds like there's a pseudo person resident that's doing it, but maybe they can formalize it with their HOA and then provide, either volunteer sign up times or, just so that they can fill it within their own meetings. And it does look like that community is really the only, like, you would only really serve that community. And then any homes that are on the other side of 99, that would be crossing there to go there.
'99, it was that school district, in that particular school.
There's like a small neighborhood on, I'm actually in that neighborhood, that,
Across
that's across the neighborhood.
What is it? Bus route?
It is up to.
In the patrol, patrol stuff that you've done out there, has it ever been focused on school hours? I know that's a detailed question, but I don't remember, but
On the top of my head, I'd probably say yes. That's usually when we're probably be out there. That's where most of the traffic would be in the morning. I'd say more like in the morning than afternoons. It would encompass the school.
do you or anybody else remember what the outcome of those enhanced controls that you did? I feel like it was like there wasn't really much of an issue, but I don't remember if that's kind of things.
There's never really been a speeding issue that we can identify. It's more of a parking issue, if the cars parking right up to the crosswalk, which Public Works took care of. Those kind of things. When we went out there and did the extra patrols, the speed was an issue, and to force that roundabout, it's difficult, because there's really no place for a patrol car, an officer to sit, that's, observe that, unless they're right on top of that roundabout. I think
Pedestrian.
no pedestrian. Single vehicle, roundabout. Then you roundabout.
Yeah, I mean, that entrance onto the roundabout from the neighborhood is really straight, right? I don't know if there's any way we can just like, not to like try to get into an engineering solution or design solution, but anything that visually we can maybe help slow down, because it's, a typical roundabout, you have to slow to make the adventure, and it feels like we kind of just have like a straight entry roundabout.
So when this first came out, we remember the public works went out there and they removed, I don't know how many trees to improve that sight line to that crosswalk. And we even removed a couple of the parking spaces right there near the crosswalk. Improved the
That probably for the vehicles too, though, that opens up their like, that could potentially, just like to help with the yielding. I don't know if there's anything that
personally, I kind of lean towards kind of the same thing we said before, which is that it's a roundabout. They're set up to work well for pedestrians that pay attention, vehicles, the drivers that pay attention. It seems like there could be some design improvements, but not sure that it can relate to the cost. Maybe we could just kind of reach back out to that HOA and encourage them to, because it's such a small community that it's serving, that maybe they can kind of organize amongst themselves for those school hours. I like that. I don't know if that seems how it works.
And I've seen like in other areas where like they'll just do temporary orange flags to like draw attention to it. And so I don't know if that's something you could maybe like do like dirt before school starts, do this actually orange flags to just make it more visible and it's temporary and so you know at some point you take it down, but at least at the beginning of the school year again or bringing visibility with a little pause.
I think part of the problem is you identify traffic coming off 99, neighborhood traffic. Point it out that.
Yeah. I mean, that leg only serves that neighborhood. It's not like, it doesn't connect anywhere else.
I just wonder if people use that neighborhood to cut through to get to the high school, you know? Like from Woodhaven, cross over at Miami, that's the fastest way to get to the high schools to go down Hanley.
So there is increased traffic.
There's increased traffic.
They're not making that.
But the head crossings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Prior to that, they're going to high school, the left-hand turn.
Yeah.
to the Roundabout, there would be no, it's the right-hand turn going into the development that causes the problem, or the straight through movement from the development out. So it's still, the people are correct if they say it's the development, citizens of that development, residents of that development, are the ones who are seventies at this point.
There are crosswalks on both sides. So kids are walking up to 99 just on the,
It's on the south side.
on the south side.
Yes.
We're doing, so kids from that neighborhood are coming out from that neighborhood, crossing over Lane, you get to the south side of Lane, you get the crosswalk across the Lane.
That's the issue. Although we're doing a trail project, and we're trying to get another crossing, that crossing on the north side. On the peak, but that's where the state. Other stuff. It's not, it's out there. Right, so we're working. I don't like at-grade crosses on highway. So. I'll leave it at that.
Flyer to people in the apartments, just like a little mailer, pointing them.
I have a question. What's within the residents' right to put out, people put out the little slow guys, right? What, I don't love those because sometimes they're played up in the middle of the street. But what is within their right or where can they put them on their property? Like if somebody was living on this corner house that looks like it actually is great, but it's crosswalk.
It's not a valid traffic control. That could be enforced. It may work at times. Possibly. Does it create more stress? As people expectations? Put it out, we should slow down versus you put it out. Everybody else puts it out. It's not a valid thing. Drive red light. to say, because if you look at the walls, you put something out in the middle of the road like that, it's not a big deal.
So don't let that roadway there, but something like that out there would probably would work. You would be able to put it up. So you have to put it somewhere near the sidewalks. I don't know how that would be.
I was just curious, because it seems like they're trying to draw. So I was trying to think if there was a way that maybe we could offer suggestion back to the.
That's why we took out the trees.
Yeah.
You got a clear sight vision all the way around the corner. You could look through the corner, clear down to the Met crossing. At the T intersection portion. So you can see it, person who's going to be standing there lying across up in the Cedar Way portion. That's not enough prior warning for these people. They're not paying attention at all.
The request was to install flashing lights at the crosswalk.
That we reach back out to the HOA and suggest maybe a kind of a volunteer system for school time crossing or flashing, and then I don't know what others about this piece, so I move for that, and then is there any discussion on the orange flag? Should we just have the HOA? Do some education and then flag, volunteer flag. Sorry, that's not the question. I move the HOA do education in their community and volunteer or set up a program for like flag and school hours. Second.
To add to that we are denying the request. Trying to think through maybe the check boxes you have in that form.
Right, yeah, denied with modification, I guess, if
That works.
Well, because there was modifications already done to that section, like we talked about, right, with the trees.
I guess say to that, no further design modifications will be made. Like, or crossing. Second.
All right. Okay, any discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Say no. All right. So now we're gonna go to 2020-004. This is the bill of Lighthaven Railroad. I don't know how I'm best organized, so I haven't talked with, well, I haven't talked directly with you about my little sketch I gave, so I don't know. I can explain my sketch and then hear your thoughts, Bob, and Captain Carlson. That works.
Yeah, so I was just like, I went back and looked up last 10 years, and I couldn't find any crashes at that. 2012, 2022.
So based on the fact that there's a perception issue with traffic, I don't like the layout of how the road connects in to Main Street anyway. I got basically two roads coming the same way. If I were to offer anything up, I would say keep the driveway access, the path crossing as the major intersection, connect these two roads, and then turn that portion of Willow Road from that point clear up to Main Street as a pedestrian corridor. But
There's a
is there
driveway.
a house on there?
There is a house up there.
Then you can't do that.
No, so yeah, so there's a sketch in the packet that
Yeah. Nice on that.
but then I just put suggesting bollards up at on Main Street. Because that was solving the problem of just at the different accesses
Yeah.
on Main Street,
Yeah, I
multiple
see.
accesses there.
Yeah, I see it now. Actually, that's not a bad solution with converting it into, local access only. You can't get out to Main Street unless you go down to this other roadway, which is railroad.
Yeah.
Extension railroad. So I don't have a problem. Neither streets really. I've taken this whole road back and looked at everything, and I've gone, why the heck is this thing up to any kind of standard, but it is. So.
Yeah.
I think the least you can get done, the least amount of effort, least cost, but biggest effect at that intersection is by closing the way to say.
Yeah, so that's what I came up with. I'm not totally convinced that it's worth the cost. I'm not sure that the issue is big enough. My opinion is more than that, but I wanted to come up with an idea, and the cost that I put on there, almost $15,000, I think it would have been a lot more palatable a couple years ago. The cost was kind of staring on me.
I think you'll have a hard time getting public works to paint that area. They're probably more than just putting boulders.
Gravel section.
Yeah.
And that would work too. They were okay with that.
I think we look at that as a future CIP, how do we deal with it in its entirety? And we've got it in our CIP, because it is substandard. There's enough homes back there that they should be on a city standard street, but it's not.
So maybe you could just simply put in rollers, Main Street, something
I
like
would
that.
put the ballers in Main Street to reduce the conflict at the intersection of Railroad and Main, where people complain about, we've got the intersection of Railroad, Main, and, Villa coming in shortly thereafter, and people don't know where it's going, and stuff like that. We know that crossing is controlled by the railroad. So trying to put additional stopping lights and stuff like that, stopping the traffic at that intersection from railroad, or not railroad, Main being a throughway. Railroad has said no to that before. I'm sure they'll say no to it again. We really don't control those intersections. So I think this will reduce the potential for any type of pedestrian incident at that intersection, crossing the roadway with all the traffic going on. I think that's the best you can do at this point.
How do we signage along with that? Because, so it, essentially that would turn it into like people walking by and sure, right? It's like a path.
It's still a pedestrian corridor. They can walk through there, they can get there. The people who live there can take access, but they would take access off of Railroad Street, the way they do now, and roll down the road. They just couldn't access Main Street. I think that's a win-win solution.
That we could put it all. Or at least maybe we can do something that this is something that might be coming.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do that. we would have to do that. But I think what you're going to do is recommend it to city council, because they would have to recommend, they'd have to take that recommendation, basically, say, yeah, Dave, right now, I don't, it's not an order that comes from you, but it's a recommendation that comes to you that goes up to the city council. The expenditure of funds.
That would come from our little funding.
It comes from your little pocket of funding that we shoot into pretty. No, it's a brand new season.
Yeah.
I was thinking, it's great, no, yeah, it's a brand new season, but again, a lot of money, 100,000 sitting there, but again, I think the expenditure out of any of that comes from city council telling us, yeah, go ahead.
This is right by, Park Street and Villa and Wildlife Haven Park.
Right.
The ballers would go at the intersection of Villa and Park.
Oh.
We were saying Main, but Main Park. Anyone else have any thoughts? Want to make a motion?
City council.
Yeah, the recommendation would be to
City manager to see what. Yeah.
City manager first, and then city council.
Right.
budget with the city. Figure out the process.
Yeah, there you go, there you go.
$1,000 at Villa and Park to restrict vehicle access.
And. For the city.
We had this is a recommendation that we do it in the next season.
And then we'll
Figure out how to do it.
email the manager.
We don't actually have any authority. All right, any discussion on the motion? Favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
So I'm clear when I said, Ballard's and Villa, they create gravel road. From Villa to Villa,
Which already exists.
Bridges.
Yeah,
so no improvement on that.
the only improvement would be the ballers.
We have to do it.
Whatever signage, whatever.
Exciting work.
On that gravel. Process.
We have time to get the specifics. I think the main point is that Villa Road at Main is blocked off. And we're trying to route traffic between common and normal intersection. That's
Yeah.
what it's doing.
And I guess the motion could have been that we recommend to close that access. Same as there.
Yeah.
However, you guys figure out to close it. Okay, so on the 2021-05 and 08, head count study at having at 9. Looks like this is just an update that's on.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, pretty much, I just, last night.
Yeah.
Here.
That's good. Anything else to add to that?
Let's wait till school districts are back in session. Sorry, we have too many projects in the staff.
And it makes more sense to wait until, it's more realistic.
Yeah.
School crossing.
Okay, so next on the list is 2021-06, we made a positive striking.
That's where public works put down that tape. Restrict parking. I've drove through there at least twice a week, just checking. It seems to be working. There's a lot of parking in front of the yellow stripe. PSA was sent out, a while ago. Enforcement's still occurring, but they're not parking there anymore, so that's haven't had any violations. That's kind of what we can do.
This one's done. Close it.
That would be. I have.
All of to close, 2021-006.
Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? I have a question, we hold these agenda items or these issues until like this point. Now we close it, but we kind of have made a decision and actions have been taken.
Yeah.
Are we communicating that with
Yeah.
people even though we're not like signing the form?
Yeah.
We already signed that form.
You mean to close?
Yeah. Like we close it, now now is when I sign it.
Right,
So
right.
we haven't signed it and issued it back to the individual.
No,
Are we communicating with the
Yeah.
individual that
yeah, yeah,
actions being taken?
absolutely, yeah, yeah. And then once it's closed, then I send them an email and let them know. And I always let them know, like, we can discuss. So they have an opportunity to go back and do the video or whatever to hear the discussion if they haven't already.
Okay, so now we got 2022-02, report of Old Town. Charleston Park.
Well, the courts has already tried to get ahead of this and move on. We already went down there on Pine Street and we moved the parking spaces. And this is in line with the other only issue with this one is some of the parking spaces are made of brick. So those are not going to be easily removed. We should actually turn out the that's most likely on that. So that's kind of where we are on that one.
Yellow tape on the river.
Again, like Public Works said, you know, one really, that's probably not going to be a full fix. That's going to be most likely to up. That's why this one's on the board. The other ones were fairly easy, just need the light on. Yeah. This one's a little bit more. Yeah. State statute says 20 feet from the crosswalk. We would not park it at the crosswalk. I don't have the ability to put it in. But they're like within 7 feet of the crosswalk. That's the issue. So obviously, the sidelines are obscured. Using the crosswalk. First reading, it's right there. Big concrete stop sign post. That's basically a small part of the Space between stop sign. That's not really part of it. Per state statute.
We have a lot of people saying that, they didn't know, you know. Nobody just came up.
You're saying, I said like, the bike tenant rack or something
Yeah.
in that stall, so we can't park there, but also.
We get to see.
The one in front. See,
This one, I believe, is for the trail, right? The trails through the home. Several around that block. Technically, every block has an issue. Like I said, Public Works is coming ahead. We've already tried to fix the ones on Pine Street.
the 2-hour parking sign. It's positioned in the, maybe not just spot.
It's there, yeah.
You can make any suggestion you want.
I don't know, if we have parking stalls that don't meet state statute, and simple issues. Cross hatch the stall, move the sign. I feel like there's something that we should be doing.
Usually very,
Sure. Get a big giant concrete flower pot.
I'll take care of it.
And now, like, has there been a count of how many stalls that, like that are downtown? Because it looks like there's more than just a specific instance.
The downtown stalls, based on the design that was
One is thinking if we do a treatment here, like applying that same treatment to the 10 other spots that are like that. I guess if we, like, you know, if we did that there, that might be like the next, people might be like, well, if you did that there. So I don't know, we have an idea of like how many stalls this might apply to. It might help.
sure
Is there a downtown
standard.
group, like association?
yes. So, well, it is business, business, it's the local business.
What if we suggested to them that they come up with a solution they like and they might. Like flower pots?
And then being taken.
So in Newburgh, there's a downtown association that pays for watering of all flower pots downtown Newburgh. Out of specific town, so.
I think the reduction of any parking spaces downtown is going to be a lot of pushback.
It will, but if you tell them that these parking stalls are not legal and we're going to close them, would you like them to be done with crosshatch striping or something more attractive? They might like to have an opinion.
I mean, put their own signage or, you know, if there's things that they want to add to it as well.
I think we need some background information. I think we need to go through and basically find out what they look like and which ones are subject to not meeting the standard, how many there are. Figure out what the configuration is such that we can provide some honest information, visuals to you to start. I think right now, we're working with words, but we're not working with what's out there. And there could be some interesting things. So let me pull up the plans, let me get some stuff squared away. And I can bring that back to you. I'd say, give me another chance at this, next month, to bring back some information. Sound okay? Put it once, and if I don't do it, I'll have somebody else assigned to my position in the interim. No.
All right, so 2022, that's newsletter for excellent from Walmart. Before we discuss this, you guys staff have their, you guys have any updates or anything you want to share, additions or kind of hash out and also.
Nothing additional that we haven't talked about.
So someone shared video, I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at the video. I have ideas, but I'll sit back.
You guys watch the videos? The crash?
Same, I agree. Yeah, that's the.
Police are really, I'm sure.
So that one is actually the 008 further down, I don't know, they're trying to similar requests. That Friday report, I don't know.
You guys for a favor on this one, and I'm guessing it's going to be a location that's going to continue to come up. And so I'll be probably in the middle of this one. You guys give me like a 1 minute possible synopsis on that location, what the complaint is, or has, what they've been. I just feel like I know this a lot, and I just get an idea it's going to be a
Try to do it without spinning my opinion on it. There's, it's a busy intersection, there's a lot of movements going on across the mall, which is Target, left turns out both Target and Walmart, through movements, left turns into those, there's, every movement is available there. There's also a pedestrian crossing. A number of years ago, there was a pedestrian fatality. And that's what led to the rapid flashing beacon crosswalk installation. With that crosswalk installation comes the stop here for pedestrians, stop bars on the through movements on bigger farms. And so, like when you see in the videos, is that people stop at those stop bars when there's no one in the crosswalk because they look like a stop sign stop bar. And then people turn out from the side streets, you know, people still have the right of way. And it's kind of a lot going on there.
It's a mess.
So that's kind of, you know, you talk to most people and they go, oh yeah, that's a horrible intersection I have to wait.
That's why I asked, and I take this a lot. Yeah, I come to that intersection, and I don't know what to do. So, I just want to hear
That's what people are.
what's the most recent then? What is the most specific right now?
Because it's a light in there, starting, we were doing like signing to make it more clear. And then it was accompanied with examples of unsafe conditions.
Yeah, possible solution, stoplight, go back to DPS for So, Kevin, remind me, I think you talked about tax history there. There isn't much.
You, or the one that this guy got up to. And obviously, we have that thing.
So the other, I guess the other background to this is that this intersection sounds like it's been a problem for a long time before this committee was ever formed. And it's been rehashed by the city staff and so
I think we've had this intersection looked at 3 different times by professional engineers, traffic engineers. And they've all come up with the same conclusions that the intersection of bed crossing, everything was done according to standards. Now, the expectation that an intersection is going to be 100% safe, that there are never going to be any type of crashes involved is wrong. Is there a portion number of crashes at this intersection that warrant doing something extreme? I would leave that up to the police department to tell me how many crashes that we've had that are actually, based on the traffic volume, how many does that represent? So he's telling me that you've had 3 crashes, but the average daily traffic volume is 5,000 cars per day over how many years that's been there. I'd say that the percentage is relatively low and doesn't warrant having to remake the whole thing. Question needs to be answered. I think that perceptions and reality have to be modified. I do know that there are ways of redoing this road section. And my civil engineer and I sat down and we looked at it. We have an option available. It will not garner any support from the businesses, absolutely not. And that is a political decision. But I can guarantee at that point, we won't have any more accidents in that intersection zone or in that entire area with the modifications that we have looked at. No, not close the entrance. But I'm going to discuss that with the city manager, my boss, Greg Sheldon, before I discuss that with any public entity. I'm just saying, we have looked at it, we have come up with a solution. It is extreme. And does it work? It does work. But like anything that works that well, comes with great cost. And that is a decision that at this point, I'm not willing to take on because it has too many business impacts and political impacts. So, like everything, we're thinking outside the box. We're trying to come up with a solution. We have one that is extreme, and it doesn't come cheaply. Because whatever solution we come up with, we're throwing away whatever we put in currently. If that pen signal is a problem, we're taking it out. You're just throwing away $135,000 that we just incorporated into that crossing in less than 7 years ago. You don't want to do that too often. So the best I can do at this point is say, I will discuss this, take this up with Greg Sheldon and Keith And we'll see where it goes from there.
I have a question, just for my own knowledge, what is the timeframe on the roundabout where they're going to? Unrelated, but in a similar area, so I was just curious.
Last thing I knew, and is Craig, are you on the line? Or are you just listening?
I can hear you, Bob. You guys are cutting out a lot, so, but I can hear you.
Craig, do you know what the status is of I know the design is complete. Was that the restriping and revamping of the roundabout basically pulled?
Yeah, so we restriped, we probably spent well over $100,000 at their roundabout, as well as, I'm gonna say, on on the actual crosswalk that met standards, was close to probably $125,000 by the time we had traffic engineers work on that. So between those two locations, we've spent a lot of money.
Yeah.
Also changed the light. We've also changed some lighting out in that roundabout as part of that plan. So there's been a lot of money invested in that intersection, as well as the actual roundabout to update it.
So there's no longer term plan, just so I understand, to begin with the roundabout is down. I was just curious, but they thought that there was.
The option is there.
Okay.
Again, the intent is the roundabout was oversized by design based on future development impacts, traffic counts that at the time seemed excessive. Now that we've had 20/20 hindsight for this. And what do? We don't want to delete those improvements because with development comes more traffic. As traffic increases, eventually we will need those facilities in their full blown out condition. So how far back can we redo it using the minimal stuff like, putting in striping and guide people signage, minimal stuff, candlesticks, things that are not permanent in nature, but they give control. We can still do that, but development is occurring. We have a lot of development plans for that. Decision has been made last I heard was that was the way it was going to about after that. Don't know what process changed it. So that's a discussion I wasn't a part of. I don't believe turning it in based on what is going on out there as far as development occurs for business development, which is way ahead of what we were planning on. They may have pulled that scenario out because the traffic is increasing significantly in that area. People don't understand the two going back to your Death Star scenario, one of my discussion, is there anything that's not that extreme that would help the situation without signage, the right to it only out of the target thing? I think what you're, the items that we're talking about aren't closure of anything. So the access points will still remain at that where they are. They'll still remain active. Whether they're full turn movements or not, that's probably not going to be realistic. I think that's one of the things that we would be saying, no, that's going to change. because that full turn movement is what's causing the problems. So there could be some restrictions on turn movements. Most likely that would be solving a significant portion of the issue. However, you have some major businesses that will go ballistic with the idea that they can only go in and out one direction on Niagara Falls Parkway. They have to take it some other place to go. There's going to be a technical pushback on that. So that is, again, something that we will look at, and we will take it up with Craig and with Keith and see just how much pressure city council wants to accept versus what's going on now. I agree. What's going on now is a confusion, but when I looked at the design parameters about putting a vent crossing across there, my own staff said, well, just remove the stop bars. And I'm going, that's not a standard component. When you take a standard design that is accepted by, say, AASHTO, WTCD, all the design, federal design criteria, and we remove a component of that because you think it's going to make it better. You take on the liability for that. I don't necessarily, as an engineer, I understand, when it's appropriate to take that liability on, and it's not appropriate to take it on just by looking at it and saying, yeah, we can do this and go with it. In this particular case, the liability is significant for the city. And I don't believe the city has the means at this point to run a scenario analysis of what that would be like without that, so that they could do a risk analysis. We would have to contract that out. BKS, Goodison, Lancaster, Mobley, any of those firms, and we would see what we would come up with. And then it would have to go through risk assessment from city council through, what's the group that we go through? CIS, their risk assessment for the city. And we have to get legal into it. I'll be legal. So what you're asking for is thought of it. We definitely will discuss it because it makes sense to discuss it. I don't know what the outcome would be because there's too many moving parts for me to even say. Like I said, I'm going to take whatever Jason and I come up with, show it to the appropriate people, and we'll see what they say. That's what I can do.
Share now. Trying to give you guys space to talk too. Looked at the traffic impact analysis that was done with the development. And one thing that stood out to me was that they identified Walmart driveway access as failing mobility standards. They're not well built out. In fact, it said well below standards. And the solution is that, so what that means is it means that there's so much traffic at that intersection that to exit out of Walmart, you're going to have to sit there for a long time. So queues are going to back up into the Walmart parking lot. And the solution is there's another exit. So if you go to exit at Walmart, you see that there's a long line. You can go around and go out the Century and exit. And those accesses have more than enough capacity to take them overload at those peak hours. And I think that makes sense from an engineering standpoint. I think that that checks all the boxes. But what stood out to me is that they identified that this is going to be a very considered. And so while meets standards, that overflow option makes sense, doesn't mean that there's not gonna be a delay in there. You're still gonna sit there for longer than you want to, which is gonna make you make a decision to enter traffic flow sooner than maybe is the safest or your most comfortable, which is what gets awkward. When you couple that with the stop bars at the intersection for the crossing, people get confused. So I think that there's solutions, and I acknowledge and understand that there's a lot of political components to this with the businesses. But I have a number of ideas that are kind of stair-stepped up in political. So the first idea is, and I tried to do research on this, and I couldn't get a solid answer on it, but change the stop bars to yield bar. So it's a bunch of triangles. You see that around. They use them, they're in UTCD at mid-block crossings. So you have a crosswalk, mid-block crossing, you put a set of stop here for pedestrians, there's a yield here for pedestrians sign and truckers. That might be a different trigger in people's brains that says, I don't have to stop here, it's not a stop sign. Because I think people see it, they think it's a stop sign. Maybe that's a little different. What I couldn't find is that does the MUTCD or does the guidance on RRFB crossings support yield for pedestrians instead of stop here? So that's one idea. Then they get a little more less favorable to the businesses. So the next one is to restrict the through and left turn movement out of Walmart. So it's only right turn. If you want to exit on the Linger Farms, that driveway, you can only exit to the right. I think that will solve a lot of the conflicts. I think that the majority of the traffic, the side traffic in that intersection probably is coming from Walmart and not Target. Or it's at least heavier on the Walmart side than the Target side. So I think that will reduce a few of the conflict points and could improve that intersection. And that will still have full access at the Target side and entrance from 99 to the Walmart complex. To do that, you'd have to put in like a pork chop island, concrete island on the Walmart driveway, and those only get so much compliance. Some people ignore them, they turn off anyway. And then the next step up would be installing a arrow channelizing median in Linger Farms Parkway. I'm going to engineer some kind of barometry stuff out. If you want to see what I'm doing, but it's not, can't share it because it's not the record or something like that. The island would restrict the through movement from Target to Walmart, vice versa, and it would restrict left turns from Target to Linger Farms and from Walmart to Linger Farms. So you still have an entrance from 99 into Walmart with that left turn, and exiting Walmart, you have a right turn. You could not turn left on the Linger Farms from Walmart or cross over to Target. And the same with Target. You leaving Target at that driveway, you can only turn right. So if you want to go to 99, you got to go to the other side of Target, or go down to the roundabout, just circle around and go back up. It's a really short circle back up. Yeah, all kinds of capacity in that intersection. We need to fill up the edge.
The interesting thing about your comments and that third proposal, just so give my opinion on that, those are the driving habits I created for myself anyway, because I dislike that intersection. So I will only go right out of Target onto that, and I actually don't exit from Walmart and that intersection. And then I've talked about it before, but I've taught 3T drivers how to drive in the last 2 years, which is really crazy, but same thing. So I would teach them the same thing. Turn right, don't go across that intersection, too much going on, too much to see, don't go left in it. So it's interesting because the last scenario that you described, while it seems like a lot of changes, it's the driving habits that I changed myself because I feel that that intersection is too much to sort of watch for. And especially for a teen driver who's not watching for everything all the time. So, you know, so what, the way that we changed going out is then we just use the other exit. I mean, we live in Sherwood, right? So we kind of know the other exit. And then for Target, we use the other exit, and then we just turn right because they both seem.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. The other thing that I thought about with that solution is that from a political standpoint and a business standpoint, the bigger driver of people coming to these businesses to spend the money is coming from Walton Sugar Road and on Linger Farms and into the complexes. And this does not restrict them. So you can still come in on Walton Sugar Road and get in the complex. All we're doing with that solution is restricting their way of exiting. And I think that with that two accesses on the Century that we're shown to have, you know, more capacity, they can take the exits. People don't want to go back onto TS Road. If you want to go from Walmart to Target, off the Century, go through that capacity, roundabout, go around, you know, the backside to Target. There's ways to do it. I think that removes so many conflict points in that intersection without sort of compromising, I guess, with the businesses. The last option, which I'm sure would be a pretty hard no, would be a full restriction to right in, right out. Close the crossing, so you can't, they're only right in, right out. Accesses to the businesses. That one, I can see them really having an issue with, because then the only way to get to Walmart would be to come down, circle the roundabout, come back up, turn right, or go to Century. And I can see that being pretty big downside. But the option that restricts through and left turns from the side streets, because I think it's a valid option that, you know, maybe if you guys are opposed to it, I'll share it with staff, and you can add it to your list of ideas to toss around internally, whether or not you want to carry it up or not, you can decide. But there's my, I guess, more than 2 cents.
That's something then that we would, you know, as a committee, just share with staff, and it's more or less just on the record that we share these with them, and that they essentially can do what, you know, they're doing.
We'll be doing it that way.
Yeah. I had one like smaller comments is that the side streets right now, like just looking at street view, and I don't think it's gonna be, but the striping is actually really faded, and on the stop signs too, they have that rider sign of like through traffic doesn't stop. So at least the side streets know very clearly that you know, like the main street won't stop, because that's the issue, right? People stop on the main and then the side street goes, but if they know that, I don't know. Anyways, that might be like a like smaller modification that might be easier to do in your own. But I don't know how effective that would be.
Our question has anyone from city, anyone belong to these businesses? You know, are they aware? Citizens, our citizens have received the problem. Have any, you know, suggestions, solution?
fine.
So it seems that we would leave it open, right, pending further discussion.
I think I'll give it a try. Yeah, we'll get this. Work back. Those discussions on it. Yeah. I'll do it. It's not a problem.
Lots of talk about this, it's really clear that staff didn't want to talk about this.
I don't think we want to go back and rehash all the engineering. That's all. If we can do this as a exhibit of basically the house, we know what we're doing. So, and come up with a solution. That would be perfect. But going back to rehash whether the analysis were accurate, but three or four. There's no benefit to that.
So like with your reference or like your alternatives, they're like tiered too, and so is it something that we would, as we, because I think, you know, there, the yielding striking would be something that could be potentially less applicable and maybe more clear for folks. And then, but I don't know if we want to like recommend that or recommend like the most restrictive and then maybe it's paired back to whatever is.
So here is a outline. Discuss this. My mind, restriction, right to roadway exit. Yes. You guys in the road, so always actually discuss. That's something. That's a discussion item. Elected leaders and businesses.
There's two.
Yeah.
I hear it differently about the convenience side of stuff, and I get a lot of complaints about it. Why are you doing this here? Why are you doing that there?
So do we leave open though to virtually similar items or how do we handle that? Because there's two
I
that
think
are
that-
like the same
I
topic.
think that you should keep the site open. Let me run the process, see, see if there's any, based on what we can do internally, whether or not we can come up with something that is palatable enough for the city manager to basically go on and say, this is something maybe we should look at and have backing by the city council. Because you could make a recommendation that has solid support, rather than making a recommendation that's gonna get, this is ridiculous. You're telling us what to do with our budget, we've already got it squared away. I don't want to do that. I'd like to basically take it in a piecemeal way so we can actually possibly make some progress. Like I said, I don't want to go back into. Fair enough. They show what's existing, they back up what's existing. What do we do from here on out? What are we trying to solve? Let's get the baseline out there and see. Situation. I think there's some issues. Right. Yeah, we can solve that. I think that's appropriate, is to support finding the solution, something going forward. Because the plates aren't like John said, the plates aren't going away. So,
Maybe the agenda or the way we talk about it, similar to the, like, the reduction in the, I know we like, well, so, yeah, just say, yeah, update on, and then just list all of them together, yeah, the two, and then any additional that we get. So, we're thinking we would share our alternatives or recommendations for with the city and just ask that they review and let us know what steps are they're looking for or what designs have been. Yeah. I'm gonna direct them to the exact place in the meeting they can listen to. Yeah.
Leave it at that.
We need to like somehow have the exhibits available then to share them with the city.
And so we email them to the thought. And so just for clarification, are you guys suggesting that we do the 2022 goal? Kind of put that together, like I did with the, that, or I did like the week 1, week 2 for the different ones. So we just need to, okay, I can do that, yeah. They're very simple.
So I was gonna mention it, if at some point it goes beyond staff, we start having conversations with council, and it's appropriate to have someone from traffic safety, be part of the conversation, more than willing to. I don't know if it turns into a political thing, which it probably will.
I think we said, well, this is retired, we can say. I'm such a nice guy, I never say anything blunt. Sarcastic. Just strictly.
Okay, anything else on that one before we move on? We could do that. I think we were, I was just thinking you take it and have the discussions and get back to us before making a motion.
Oh, okay. All right.
Maybe some of these ideas already are.
Yeah.
Maybe.
We are engineers.
Yeah.
Was.
Okay, so, the last one is concerns for pet crossing, it would be a consensus, suggest pet crossing is change. Oh, wait, no, oh, ED road. Speed. Is the updates on? Same, okay.
Just like everything else we do, let's start off with public outreach, then we go to doing the enforcement, then we go into what do you want to do to change things around physically to get people to comply. I'm not going to say that Sunset down isn't a great, intersection because of the way everything is merging, splitting apart. Everything else. Wish I could get people to drive the speed limit, but that's not my, I can't change their behavior. Well, maybe I can physically. Just like everything, I am making plans. You have plans, they're extreme. I guarantee you, they will not be liked by anyone. They do the job very well. So I figure if we can, when you come to me, I'm gonna put a restriction on something that everybody's gonna feel the pain. I'm not sure that that's what you all want. But I can do that. I think that what we have to do is, again, follow the process. And then where there are some of these issues that are related to CIPs, break them apart, what's reasonable to break it apart, in what format, and see what we can do there. Up to now, it's been Timberville at Sunset. Now it's a shift to Woodhaven at Sunset. And I've got other complaints along up and down Sunset for everything. So,
And we talked about a long-term plan, right, for starting on a long-term plan, but a study in the future all up and down Sunset, including traffic and
yes.
Yeah.
And that I support wholeheartedly. I think that my recommendation is that city council look to run a TSP update and do these corridors, not just along Sunset, but also do the Murdoch, Sunset, Oregon, all the major thoroughfares, and finally get a single document that takes care of all these issues that we have with traffic, instead of trying to piecemeal it out and really get it done in one thing. Because if we try and do Sunset by itself, then we go over to Edie by itself, we're not getting any benefit from us. If we're going to be paying a lot to have individual reports, I'd rather have it all wrapped up into a nice TSP. That means it's going to have to wait. But I think that is a better way of dealing with it. Is to take it as a whole thing, a whole system. And with the whole system as it is currently, because it has changed since the last TSP. The last TSP probably didn't include a lot of stuff, including where the high school was located. Never came into our vision. So I think that my recommendation has been that city council, if not next year, because the budget better into it, but the next fiscal year, we allocate to a TSP update, and that will identify these projects, we build our CIP around that TSP. That gives us the guidance of which projects need to be done, when, where, how much it will cost, and then we plan for it, and we move ahead based on their priorities.
Use some of our funding of the 100,000 to see some of the early, either an RFP for the consultant, for non-consultant, or even just to start some of the community conversations, so that folks know that this is something that we're hoping to do, and that, because I think a lot of our responses then will be like, oh, we're hoping to address an upcoming, study, or then, so it might, is there something anyways that we could do as our committee, and with that funding to help, kind of start those conversations, or any kind of outreach, or even just
I believe that the basis for which this committee was initiated for was a bunch of the smaller complaints, not the CIP complaints, not the projects. We deal with parking, we deal with people's, how do you deal with speeding in this area? How do you deal with lighting, street lighting? How do you deal with parking head crossing? I think when you're talking about, well, we need the street redesign or speed or volume, you're getting into things that are, it's. And I really do appreciate it. It helps to have that type of support. But it's out of sequence, and I don't think you have enough money to make it a difference. In that aspect, I think you get more bang for your buck dealing with public outreach programs, dealing with some of the minor things where the money goes a lot further. I suspect that if I were to say, okay, you're going to put in, you're going to help us do a TSP update. That TSP update, current orders, $250,000 to $380,000. Your $100,000 won't even cover that. But you could do the public outreach piece, which would be, I think, well within your goals of how to do that. How does that work? How do you coordinate that? How do you make that a reality? How do you get people to actually become part of that? I think that's valid. That's something the city staff doesn't have time to do, to tell you the truth. Just not enough people, not enough bodies.
Well, I think part of my concern with some of the stuff, and I agree with you, well, the big study, you figure it all out. So my concern is we identified, and I don't know what the communities are, we've identified an area that either considered the owner, but it's in front of the study. Is there anything that is not that? All so traffic, whatever, while the study is being done, because I don't feel really bad if something horrible happens while we're waiting for study.
I'm on board with that. Again, first thing, public outreach, getting the public involved, getting the public to help monitor and control the driving habits is going to go a long ways to giving us the breathing room we need before we get the studies done and can incorporate the budget, actually do good things, big things. So again, the three tenets that I believe in: public outreach, try and modify people's behavior by making them part of the solution, part of the control, part of the identifying and trying to rein in the people who are feeling entitled that they can go through our city at 50, 55 miles per hour because they have a hot car that makes a lot of noise. First step is getting out, and that's something that I think this committee should be involved in. Absolutely. You're supposed to represent, I believe, the voice of our community. You're the part, just like the council, is you're trying to help this community solve some of its problems. What's the limit? Where's your beginning point? Where do you make the biggest impact? What's the lowest hanging fruit to get that will give us the biggest impact that we can work with and build upon? I think that's very good. Again, city staff, there's just not enough of us around to do all of that maintaining. So the more we can expand out, get the public involved, the better off we're going to be.
I have a question just back to this one specifically. Do you know, it says suggestion to add crossing beacons and change double left-hand turn to single left turn. Do you know where that's referring to? Double left-hand turn, just single, single left turn.
Looking at the picture, there's two left, I think they're trying to get rid of 2 lanes on.
From turning from 99 onto.
So they're saying that because there's 2 lanes that turn on.
That merge into one.
And
Like
they
a
do.
race.
Yeah, or people don't know that second lane and
Got it.
stuff in there.
Which that is confusing. It referenced the intersection of Woodhaven and Sunset, so I was trying to picture at that intersection where there were 2 lanes. So, okay, that makes sense.
That coming off the highway, there are 2
Yeah.
lanes. I don't necessarily agree with the setup, because you've got two lanes that are starting to merge. And as they merge, you've got a turn here going to Woodhaven, and you've got another split that goes up
And a parcel.
and a crosswalk. And it's kind of crazy, to tell you the truth. However, I think that whole section needs to be challenged and redone as a whole unit. I'm not certain I can get away with telling the state, no, we're gonna get rid of one of your lanes. That's not gonna happen. So what do we do with that is how do we connect it further down? I'm not sure about the solution there because it's a mishmash of people wanting to merge, but somebody might be coming up to your right, who wants to turn right. And then you start looking this way and then suddenly there's somebody coming around this side who wants to turn left. And you got this going on at the same time.
I can definitely see the concerns if you're coming away from the high school back into the neighborhood and in the traffic. And if there are people crossing, or waiting to cross, you can't see that they're waiting to cross. If I'm in the center lane and I'm gonna go straight and there's somebody there waiting to turn left, and then there's traffic coming from each way, that intersection gets really, really busy now. And I can definitely see the concerns that you can't even see somebody waiting there to cross on the left, if they were on the left, if I'm going towards the park. Way back into town. So I guess I would, not that helps, but I can see the concerns there. There's a lot of traffic there and you can't see the people waiting on either side, especially the other side, the left.
I think, I'm sorry, I think we kind of had a similar conversation with the intersection down the road. We all acknowledge that there's an issue that could be solved, but it's bigger than a simple, maybe just do this thing, it's gonna be cheap, it's like, there needs to be, you're saying a bigger picture, look at the whole area. I think that if we acknowledge that we acknowledge the issue, agree with them, and acknowledge that bigger picture of what needs to happen. We've already made a decision with previous one. We're not recommended to do that. We're just making a recommendation here. I don't know that there's I don't, personally, I don't see a simple stopgap. Have a lot of things, like Bob said, we need a lot of things to do. They're expensive, they're gonna require study and engineering and a bunch of money, capital expenditure, to make it happen. It wouldn't make sense to do anything without looking at the corridor as a whole. So, I would recommend that we respond the same way we did to the role.
Working with the school for school time crossing guards. So I don't know if that's something also we want to.
At that intersection, they technically are going in school at that intersection.
Well, it does access Middleton, right?
Yeah, it could, but they're supposed to go down and cross where the crossing guards are. I think that's their argument at times. It's more high school walkers that use that. I mean, other people too, but it's high school walkers that we have crossing guards there anyway.
So, looking back at 23-108, we recommended, or we asked the city to requested traffic study to be completed from Pinehurst to 99 on Sunset, add that to the CIP list, which I think she did. And we wanted to keep it on the list as pending, just to keep it on our radar. And that's same thing.
It seems so related that it makes sense.
I don't know if we need to make a motion for that. Just means we're not gonna close it.
Right, since we're not closing it, and yeah, I think recommendation. Stuff taken.
And we have to-
Yeah.
So, are you guys okay with whatever? Alright, jump ahead. So then the last thing, is 2022-05 and 06, which are ED red and colored A speed limits. I don't know if you have, it's on the list, I don't know if you have an update.
I have not received any updated information from ODOT. I know that they're in process. But as an example, one for Murdoch, Baker Road, was a year and a half, roughly, year to a year and a half before they issued their speed zone order. I put in those requests 5 months ago. So you got another time frame to deal with. All I can say is they will let us know when they have it ready to go. My gut reaction to everything that I know, based on my traffic counts, is that ED is warranted. Elwood, I'm having a hard time supporting it based on the traffic show. But Elwood has more of a traffic issue relative to the school zone, where people are not obeying the school zone speed. So they aren't speeding in the rest of the roadway or down Elwood at all during normal traffic hours. But when the school zone is in play, they are not changing that speed at all. They are not conforming to the speed zone relative to the school zone. I can see that from the traffic. I should see a drop in the data for the 40-mile-an-hour traffic volume and a jump, a spike in the 20-mile-an-hour traffic volume. I'm not saying it's just consistent.
The 22-05, it also says status of the physical speed of qualified options. That
I think that's the Washington County state project.
Oh, okay.
And you gotta remember, Eden Road, Elwood Road, both those roads are Washington County controlled. They own those roads. So the idea of dating somebody else's roads, that takes a little bit different scenario. I'm sure that Washington County would love to put it in the road, give it to us, and then we can stuck with a road that needs to be updated with significant sums of money that we don't have.
I think we can remove these from some future agendas since we get an update. Maybe it's in a year and a half. Okay, that's, last of the business. Does anybody have any meeting comments?
Certainly, last week, the Washington County attorney decided not to charge driver to so small records, VA records. says that blacked out. Now, I can't write my, how someone black out to those, it was a medical issue. Was blacked out. But going further on that, sorry about this topic. Is this guy still? Is he still alive? I didn't want. I don't know that.
You can ask them, that person, to keep the license. Probably.
So I was told. Some kids, some adult.
Right. You can't charge someone if you can't prove that they committed a crime. That's why they'll be able to be in depth on what they look at, why they didn't charge you. Wasn't speeding, wasn't impaired. Let's say you don't have a medical emergency.
Person also has an ability, if feel someone doesn't have the ability to drive, that can be assessed by the DMV. Soon, any driver, right? This circumstance, they would look at that, make a determination based on the circumstances, if they need to have that person retested. Tends to be more for somebody who has a pattern.
Consider a very kindness, for restricting success. Sidewalk. Parkside. Sunset. Bring the road on the street. It's wider than average. Greg may know it's a capital. Like a checker. Civil engineer. Who's managing the project. He would know the status. I can say, you know. Is there any update on the pedestrian bridge? Oh, yes. I have just got through the council approved contract for the taking the design to 100% design. Big rig. So I kick off with the engineering firm in charge of that. It's going to happen. I'm not sure. It's probably next week or tomorrow. One of the two. I'll check the schedule.
that part is, that kicks off both the technical design of the bridge itself, permitting all the stuff that we need to bridge across. But it kicks off a parallel path for the park and lighting portions, which is very much going to be a community involvement response. What do we want to see? What do you guys want to see? How much of it, whatever. And that is now in play as well, so I have to get that. So.
Do they have an idea of when the bridge will be done? What it will be?
I have an idea of when the design will be done. And it's going to be 9 to 12 months. I say 9 to 12 because if permitting goes, just according to plan, if we get everything we need, blah, 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 we can be ready to go. Or more likely 12 months, get it back. We've got to get approvals, Washington County approvals, all these other approvals from different jurisdictional agencies to bring back, including PG. Because those big high power lines, we have to locate. All come in play. So I can at least say that the design is probably a year out. One more thing that has to be completed before you're allowed to retire. Well, no, that's not.
All right. Any other? Have any citizen comment?
No additional, no, it's the one.
Concerns?
I usually avoid. Where's your big question? Yeah, we could. No, I know, I agree with you, yeah. Absolutely.
You've been saving all your ideas for all your.
Change that word.
Had a lot of thoughts.
All right, we're, with that, we'll adjourn.